In this video, I'm going to go all retro grouch, as you can tell by my moustache, and I'm going to take a pedal down memory lane and have a look at some of the things about the bikes of my younger years that I miss and why I miss them. And I'm also going to have a look at some of the things that I definitely don't miss and I'm glad to see the back of. Just look at this beautiful Colnago Master Olympic. Is there anything more beautiful than that? It's the traditional geometry that gives it like a lovely sort of form, has a horizontal top tube, straight down tube, seat tube, and seat stays that aren't dropped, they go directly up to meet the top tube at the back. It's just like got a sort of lovely stability and integrity, even an honesty that modern bikes with drop seat stays and funny shaped tubes just don't have. And while I'm on the subject of beauty, have a look at the paint. I mean, this is just incredible. This is what Colnago called the Art Deco paint, and you really don't see anything like that anymore. This Colnago, perhaps controversially, but actually Team Mappe used Shimano, has Dura Ace group set. It's the Dura Ace 7700 9-speed group set, and it's just beautifully polished. I mean, you don't get polished group sets anymore, and I think that's a shame because, you know, that just is lovely. It's not just about the shape of the tubes, but it's about what they're made from. Now, good quality steel tubing, like this Columbus Gilco tubing that this Colnago is made from, just has a lovely ride quality. It's so smooth that it doesn't need drop seat stays or funny shapes. It just has a ride quality that's like nothing else. This bike just has exactly the right blend of comfort and stiffness, and a lot of the ride quality is down to the steel fork, which just soaks up road vibrations perfectly. A frame builder once said to me that every other material tries to emulate the ride quality of steel, and he was right, although obviously he had a vested interest. Sure, steel's heavier than carbon and aluminium, and there was a time about 10 years ago when the gap was actually pretty big when carbon bikes were really light, but now, with the arrival of disc brakes, the gap's narrowed again, and actually this bike weighs just over 9 kilos, or 20 pounds in old money, and really you're getting some top disc brake road bikes, race bikes, weighing upwards of 8 kilos, so the difference is really not that massive anymore. Okay, so an Italian bike like a Colnago really was the pinnacle, but you used to see names like Geoffrey Butler, Bates, Roberts, Bob Jackson, Brian Rourke, Mercian, and all of these British names were associated with regions and local cycling communities. You don't really see that anymore. Once you got to a certain level in your cycling, you went to see a local frame builder, one of these guys, and you got a frame made to measure. And it was not only a rite of passage, but it was also supporting local industry. The name on the Downtube told a story, as did the bike, which was unique and like nobody else's. I don't think anybody would disagree with me that life was much simpler before the era of the proprietary component. Shimano Campagnolo compatibility was all you had to worry about. Properly established standards, like the ones specified by ISO, the International Standards Organization, mean that you can get parts for a bike years after it's no longer the current model, which is why it's so easy to buy a bike from the 70s, the 80s or the 90s like this Colnago and just restore it very simply. But there's light at the end of this particular tunnel. The bike manufacturers themselves are coming back round to the idea that there are benefits to a 68mm threaded bottom bracket, a 27.2mm seat post. Even Cannondale, the inventors of the BB30, have gone back to a 68mm threaded bottom bracket shell on the new Synapse. Anybody could build up an old bike like this Colnago. All you might need a bike shop to do is to press in the headset, and the rest of it you can do yourself with a set of Allen keys and the right bottom bracket tool. Even internal cable routing didn't used to present any kind of problem. Now this is an internally routed rear brake cable that just goes straight through the top tube. It's literally the cable just pushes straight through, comes out the other side. Now you've got a sort of spaghetti of cables, wires, hoses that go through the bars and the stem and down in front of the head tube. And really, who's going to make any sense of that? And it's all for what? For the sake of, well, a watt or two, a clean looking front end. Now, I think disc brakes are dominant enough that it's possible to say that you miss rim brakes. They were just so simple to set up. All you need is an Allen key, and for this you just need a pair of cable cutters, and there you go. The brake pads are right there, easy to see, easy to check the wear, and easy to replace. There's no bleeding necessary, there's no working out what kind of fluid you need. The brakes are just there. And the other thing about rim brakes is that they work really well. People seem to forget that they're really all you need on a road bike. I mean, ask yourself, how many times do I stop on a standard hour ride? For me, it's probably less than 10 times if I'm riding on my own or even with a mate. I stop at junctions and that's all I need the brakes for. If you live in the Alps or if you ride technical gravel, then it might be a different scenario, and then there's a good case for the disc brakes. But for a road bike for ordinary road riding in Britain, this is all you need. One of the reasons why rim brakes are disappearing is because tyres are getting too fat for them. Why are tyres getting too fat? Because frames are getting too stiff. It's a vicious circle. Now with a steel frame, there was enough comfort in the steel frame itself that you didn't need balloon tyres unless you were touring and carrying heavy panniers. You might think I've gone mad saying I miss skinny tyres, but the difference in performance between an expensive skinny tyre and a cheap skinny tyre is not as great as the difference in weight and performance between a cheap 30 or 32mm tyre and an expensive one. Fat tyres are great if they're supple, lightweight and tubeless, but cheap heavy ones with thick inner tubes just dull the ride and add weight. So to sum up, I'd say that a cheap narrow tyre is less detrimental to the performance of your bike than a cheap fat one. Now some people might think I'm going too far here, but I'm going to add to the list of things I miss aluminium wheels. Now there used to be wheel builders at the back of bike shops who would build you the wheel you wanted. You chose the hub, the spokes and the rim, and he built it for you. Now you buy a carbon wheel set that was made in China or Taiwan, and it's incredibly expensive, and it's the same as everybody else's. Okay, so the carbon wheel set might be a little bit more aerodynamic, a little bit lighter, but really is that a priority over serviceability, durability, individuality, and price? Talking of price, the top road bikes today can cost over £12,000. Now, looking at the inflation rate in the UK over the last 30 years, it's just over 100%, which would mean that a top road bike in 1990 would cost £6,000. And I certainly don't remember them costing that much. And if they had, would any cyclists have actually been able to afford one? Now, if you want a prestige classic bike like this one, the good news is that you can get one off eBay pretty cheaply. I bought this Colnago as a frame and fork off eBay for £450 in 2014. And I sourced all the rest of the components separately, all the Dura-Race 7700 group set, all that came off eBay as well. And the whole thing cost me just under £1,000. And finally, will I be standing here in 2052 praising whatever it is, in my opinion, makes the 2022 bike better than the 2052 one? Well, hopefully I'll still be here, but I really doubt that many bikes from 2022 will be, or at least in a rideable state. Even if I was able to replace the proprietary components, would the carbon fibre have suffered from some sort of galvanic corrosion from being next to metal parts, metal inserts and bolts? Would it have been damaged? You can't always see it. I'm not so sure. Whereas a steel bike will last a lifetime if it's properly looked after and cherished, as it should be. And when it does come to the end of its life, it can just be recycled. It's not going to end up in landfill or even worse, in the sea. So those are some of the things I miss, but that's not to say old bikes were perfect. I might have been suggesting that the cycling industry has been fixing things that ain't broke, creating solutions in search of a problem, and generally charging us too much money. But there are certain things about old bikes that I'm really definitely glad to see the back of. We've done a quick bike change just to illustrate the things that I don't miss, and the first of these is toe clips and straps. Now, strapping your foot into a steel cage and then pedalling, that sounds like torture, and it does feel like torture. And it's pretty dangerous as well, I would say. So thank God for the clipless pedal, which has been around for the last 35 years, pretty much unchanged since Look came up with the original ski binding derived pedal, and only Speedplay have messed with the design. And they've really just turned the whole thing on its head with the spring mechanism in the shoe rather than the pedal, and that works really well, so thank God. For racing bikes, a 5339 chainset or a 5242 even was standard. That was fine as long as you had a decent spread of gears at the back, but you generally didn't, which meant that if you were going uphill and at the same time you wanted a reasonably close ratio, then you'd have to really put your back into it. And you can see that literally that's how it used to be. If you look at footage of old racers going up hills, it's like... So good riddance to big gears. Downtube levers. Now I had to think hard about whether to include these in my list of things I don't miss, because some people really like them. Some people actually enjoy that you have to finesse the lever and even listen to whether the chain is on the correct cog or not. But for me, I mean, no thank you. I appreciate the fact that there's a really nice direct connection, just this cable running straight to the derailleur, and it's lightweight as well. But really, I don't want to sit down every time I want to change gear. I just want to do it with a button. That's all I want from shifting, I don't care. Some things are best consigned to history, and sadly, Downtube levers, they're one of them, or two of them. So those are the things I miss and don't miss about old bikes. If you think I'm just a nostalgic old fool, then let me know in the comments underneath. And if there are things that you miss and don't miss about old bikes, then let me know about those too. And don't forget to like and subscribe.